It can be a strange thing to be invisible, to be in a room full of people and feel like you're not really there, to watch others live a life you built for them while you are pushed to the side. You might think you have no power, no voice, but you would be wrong. This is the story of how my grandson told me my parents were going to take all my money tonight. And it's the story of how I stopped it without a word and without a tear. My grandson, Noah, tugged on my sleeve as the music played on. "Grandma," he whispered, "Mom and Dad are going to take everything from you tonight." It was a secret too dangerous to speak out loud. His warm breath was against my ear, right in the middle of what was supposed to be my 70th birthday celebration. The room around us was beautiful. Lights from the chandeliers sparkled. Soft jazz music played. Glasses clinked together, and laughter was in the air like wine. But none of it really felt like it belonged to me. I was sitting at a small table near the kitchen doors, where the servers came and went in a rush. My dinner was late, and the chicken was cold. No one asked if I wanted wine. The flowers on the table were like a wall, as if I had been placed behind it on purpose. I looked at the program. There were 4 speakers. My name was not one of them. Andrew, my son, was at the front now. He was not my son by blood, but by my choice. I had raised him since he was a baby abandoned in a hospital bed. He used to call me Mama when he was asleep. Now he smiled under the stage lights, as if he had always belonged there. His voice was calm and practiced. "Tonight," he said, "we celebrate a legacy, a family, and the woman who made it all possible." The guests clapped politely. Clarissa stood next to him, looking perfect. She held his hand with one of hers and a microphone with the other. Her diamond bracelet caught the light as she smiled sweetly at the crowd. "We are so grateful for the woman who helped us get here," she said, "though, to be honest, I never really knew her well. She always felt like a distant grandmother." She looked at me then, on purpose, and smiled as if she had given me a compliment. Distant grandmother. I sat still, my hands folded. The burn of her words was colder than the plate in front of me. I had signed over my house to Andrew and Clarissa 3 years ago after Andrew lost his job. They promised they just needed a fresh start. I had paid off their debts. I had paid for the renovations of this very home where they were having this elegant party. And still, I was the stranger. I looked down at Noah. His small hand held mine tightly. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike. He fell twice, then looked up at me and said, "Do you think I can still be brave?" I told him then, bravery is not about balance. It's about getting back up. He didn't smile. He didn't eat. He just looked at me with those wide brown eyes that had once belonged to my daughter, my real daughter, before the hospital made a mistake with the records and gave me a child they claimed was mine. Noah spoke to me again. He saw, "They already put the papers on your desk." I saw Dad's laptop was open. The file said, "Estate Draft Final Sign-Off." I clicked it by accident, but I remember the name. It had your signature scanned and he said quietly, "They said it's just for emergency transfer." But I peeked. It's everything. The company, the last account, even the garden. They're going to make you sign it after dinner when you're tired. I breathed in slowly, quietly, not with fear, but with a clear mind. Andrew had just raised his glass, toasting to strength and grace, and the room was clapping again. But I knew what strength really looked like. It looked like standing alone in a lawyer's office with a pen in my hand and a baby in my arms, signing adoption papers when I had nothing else. It looked like building a business from nothing while pretending not to hear when people whispered, "She's too old to keep up." Now they were ready to erase me completely, but I was not tired. Not yet. The invitation said 70 years, a big celebration for a great woman. 70 years of wisdom, grace, and family. I remember thinking when I first saw the gold letters that maybe there had been a mistake because no one had asked me about planning it. The guest list went out without my ideas. The menu was planned without my taste. The speeches were written without my story. And on the night itself, I became sure that this celebration was not about me. It was about quietly getting rid of me with violins and champagne. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing the dark blue dress I had saved for my granddaughter's graduation. It still fit. I had my hair done at the same place I had been going to for decades. The stylist, God bless her, said I looked special, like a queen. But at the front door, the person who was checking people in, who I am sure was hired for the party, asked if I was there for the catering service. I told her my name. Her smile got weaker, and she showed me to a table in a corner near the emergency exit. That table became my spot for the night. Far from the stage, near the kitchen, the flowers in the middle were so tall that I could not see the stage unless I leaned forward. So I did not lean. I just listened. The music got louder. The lights got dimmer, and there was Andrew, my son. Not of my blood, but of 35 years of scraped knees, math homework, hospital visits, and school payments. I found him in a hospital nursery after losing my daughter to a terrible mistake with the records that no one would explain to me. The nurses said he had no mother. I took him home, raised him with everything I had. And now he stood at the microphone, handsome in his nice suit, smiling as if the cameras were meant for him alone. My mother, he began, taught me to be strong, to be driven, and to be dedicated. There was applause. He nodded politely. But of course, I'm speaking of the mother who raised me, not my biological one who passed away when I was a baby. The woman who gave me a place to live, my foster mother, my second chance. He looked at me. Let's give a round of applause for her, shall we? Foster mother, second chance. No name, no love, just a way of creating a distance between us. Clarissa stood beside him, holding his arm. She leaned in and took the microphone in a smooth way. It's important that we honor the truth, she said. Andrew's strength comes from his roots. Yes, but not all roots are permanent. Some are temporary supports. We're thankful for every part of the story. She turned toward me then, smiling as if she had said something deep. And we're especially thankful for his foster mother's kindness. Without her, we would not have gotten this far. There was polite clapping. I nodded once, accepting nothing. Later, during the toasts, Clarissa added, I keep telling her she should finish signing things while her memory is still sharp. Otherwise, in a few months, we'll be chasing down legal papers like it's daycare for old people. Laughter was heard from their table. My knife made a small sound against my plate. The fish was cold and had no salt. I had not touched it. Across from me sat Noah, my grandson, Andrew, and Clarissa's boy. He was 10, small for his age, always watching. That night, he had barely touched his juice. Grandma, he whispered. They said, tonight's the night. I turned to him. His hands were folded on his lap. His eyes were wide. They're taking you to the doctor after this, he said, to check your memory. Dad said, if you forget even one address, they'll use that to move your stuff. Mom said, you might not even come back here. They already packed some things. I didn't seem surprised. I just looked at him. They said, it's just paperwork, he added, and that they love you. But I saw Dad practicing your signature. He had your will on the screen. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. Thank you for telling me, I said as quietly as I could. He nodded once, his eyes showing a feeling far too old for a 10-year-old. On the far end of the ballroom was a screen showing photos of the family over the years. Smiling faces, beach vacations, graduation hats, hospital bracelets. There were baby pictures, school photos, wedding photos, and Christmas dinners. I looked for myself. There were none. Not even one. In a photo from Andrew's college graduation, where I had stood at the back in the rain, clapping with both hands, my image had been cut out. In a wedding photo from 10 years ago, where I had paid for the flowers and the place, my name had been left out of the thank you speech. In a Christmas photo from 3 years ago, I had been asked to take the picture, not be in it. The plan was clear now. I had been erased slowly, carefully, even with a kind smile. So, the birthday celebration was not a tribute to me. It was a change, from a head of the family to a memory, from a protector to a problem. I looked up at the screen. A photo of Andrew and Clarissa holding Noah in a hospital bed appeared. The words below it said, 3 generations of hope. There were only 2 people in the photo. I smiled then, not with happiness, but with understanding. I had given them everything, and tonight they would ask for the rest, with piano music, with good wine, with fake tears if needed. But I would not sign. Not tonight. Not ever again without reading every word, remembering every name, and taking back every part of myself they tried to write out of the story. When I returned home that night, I did not turn on the lights. I knew the way by heart. The floor creaked in familiar places. The shadows in the hallway did not scare me. What scared me was how clear everything had become. I walked past the family pictures. Each one was a still picture of a version of love that had ended. In the hallway mirror, I saw myself. Not as they saw me, old, not useful fading, but as I truly was, sober, whole, and now completely awake. I went into my office and sat at the old oak desk I had made nice again myself when the business first began. The surface still had small scratches from Noah's toy cars. That had been years ago, when he was still allowed to spend weekends with me, when he still called me his real grandmother without being corrected. I opened the bottom drawer and took out the folder I had kept hidden for months. The paper was thick, the ink dark and final. My legal team had prepared it as I had asked, a legal paper to give part of the company. 35% of Sterling Group was going to be in Andrew's name on his 40th birthday, which was, by chance, today. It was a birthday gift. Not a bonus, not a smart business move, just a gift. $70 million worth of company ownership built from nothing and almost destroyed more than once. All for him, for the son I chose. For the boy who used to cry when I left for work and sleep next to my desk while I balanced the books. I unfolded the contract and looked at the line where my signature was supposed to go. It was empty, waiting for me. How foolish. I remembered everything it had taken to create Sterling Group. Not just the business deals and the deadlines, but the shame. The first legal paper I signed for a catering job was in the basement of a church. They paid me with checks that would only be good later. I cleaned bathrooms between meetings. I sold the new car my husband had given me before his stroke, the last nice thing he ever gave me, just to be able to pay for our first business space. I carried plates at weddings where guests asked if I had any grandchildren yet. I lied and said yes. Andrew was 2. I was 40 and no one noticed me. But I worked. I built. I saved. When the bank said no to a second business loan, I borrowed against my own life insurance. I told no one, not even Andrew. He was 13 then, angry that I could not afford a class trip to Europe. He never asked why. He just seemed sad. I remember using the last of my emergency money to pay for his suit for a dance. And here I was now, on the night of my own birthday, almost tricked into signing away the legacy that had cost me my health, my marriage, and my youth, not as a reward for being loyal, but as a bribe for being quiet, as if getting rid of me would be worth the money. I picked up the pen, turned the first page, and looked at the part one had asked to be added. This agreement is made in good faith, in recognition of love freely given. What good faith? What love? I put the pen down. I stared at the fireplace across the room, cold, empty, just like the tone in Clarissa's voice when she joked about my memory. Just like Andrew's applause when the guests toasted to new beginnings. That was what tonight had been about. Not thankfulness, not family. A transfer, a takeover. I tore the first page in half. The sound was softer than I had expected. Then I tore the second and the third. I did not cry. I did not shake. I tore every page slowly, exactly like someone separating themselves from an old lie. It felt good. Not mean, not cruel, just necessary. By the time I finished, the contract was nothing more than a pile of curled paper on the floor. I stood, swept it into the trash can, and placed a match beside it. I did not light it. I did not need the drama. The act of saying no was enough. I did not feel sad about that contract. I felt sad about the fact that I had once believed I needed to earn my place in their future by giving away my past. That belief had died tonight. In its place was something stronger. Not sadness, but a clear mind. And a clear mind, unlike gifts, cannot be taken away. The morning after my birthday, the sky over Grand Haven was the same pale gray it always was in early spring. Cool, not caring, not bothered by the problems of men or mothers. I arrived just before 7 a.m., before the resort opened its food tables, before the spa lights turned on. The staff nodded respectfully. None of them knew this wasn't just another walkthrough. I went to the conference room, the one with soundproof walls and no windows. Privacy built into its very walls. Waiting inside were two men I had trusted longer than I had trusted Andrew. Mr. Rollins, my lawyer of 20 years, and Jonathan Chu, the accountant who knew where every single penny in Sterling Group had ever gone. They stood when I entered. I told them to sit down. "Shall we begin?" I said, not wasting time with polite talk. They looked at each other, sensing the importance of the moment. I took out the folder marked Directive Revision and pushed it across the table. "I want to update the will right away," I said. "I will not be waiting this time." Mr. Rollins opened the folder and read my notes I had written with my own hand. He raised his eyebrows at the first line. "Remove Andrew and Clarissa Henderson from all inheritance provisions. No hesitation, no questions." He nodded and began the paperwork. "Next, give 25% of the company's ownership to Noah Grant, my biological grandson." Jonathan paused then. "That's a big transfer, ma'am." "It is," I said, "and it is fair." Jonathan gave a slow nod. "Does anyone know?" "No, and he does not need to yet. But when he is ready, when he is grown, he will find the papers waiting." We moved on. I opened a separate file, one I had been working on quietly for the last 2 years. An idea, a dream never spoken out loud. It was labeled Silent Seat Foundation. Mr. Rollins read the purpose line: to support and honor mothers who have been erased by family, by tradition, by betrayal. I told him, transfer all remaining assets into the trust. That includes money, company shares, properties, and other holdings. Jonathan looked shocked for a moment. "That's over $100 million. "It is a legacy," I said. They worked in silence. I signed with firm movements. No ceremony, no champagne. By 10 a.m., the documents were made legal. Andrew and Clarissa were officially removed from every part of the will they once thought they had secured. No money, no percentages, no payment for moral failure. I did not feel like I had won. I felt like everything was finally where it was supposed to be. Afterward, I walked the grounds of Grand Haven alone. I watched as couples enjoyed the outdoor cafe. A child chased birds across the patio. The air smelled of lemons and cedar. I had chosen those smells myself for the seasonal fragrance program. Every detail of this resort had my touch on it. I sat on a bench under the tree we planted 15 years ago, when Sterling first had its great success. Andrew had helped plant it. He was 14 then, muddy and smiling, asking if one day he could build a hotel of his own. He had. He had built a future on the foundation of my silence. And last night, he had tried to erase me from it. I sat beneath the tree, watching the sunlight filter through its branches. I did not cry. I did not shake. My chest felt quiet, steady, the kind of stillness that comes only after you finally put down a weight you have carried for too long. That afternoon, the quarterly board meeting began. The directors gathered in the meeting room, drinking tea, straightening their ties, not knowing that anything had changed. I entered exactly at 2 p.m., wearing a gray silk dress and no jewelry. I took my seat at the head of the table. Andrew was not there. He had not been invited. Clarissa likewise had no seat. Their names had been removed from the list of people who could come hours earlier. We went over the plan, expansion projects, yearly charity updates, and money goals for the next 3 months. At the end of the meeting, someone asked, "Madam Chair, is there anything else you'd like to add?" I smiled. "Nothing at all," I said. And that was the moment of the quiet fight. Not with a public statement or a lawsuit or a screaming match, but with a calm mind, with the ink of a signature, with a change that could not be undone. When I left the boardroom, I passed a wall of pictures, past the leaders of the Sterling board, executives whose names lined history. I stopped and looked at mine. A woman in dark blue, hands folded, looking directly forward. Under it, a brass plaque, Margaret E., Sterling founder and CEO. I looked at that face, not the one from last night's birthday party, sitting at the side table, forgotten, laughed at, dismissed, but the real one, the woman who knew exactly when to speak, and even better, when to act. A week later, the whispers started, not in boardrooms, but at cafes and online forums. Clarissa had begun to refer to herself as the future leader of Sterling Group. She said it with a bright, bitter smile. At a charity lunch hosted by the Chamber of Commerce, she introduced herself to a local reporter with the line, "My husband is the heir, but I will be the face." She wore pearls I knew. I had given them to her on her 5th wedding anniversary. I did not reply. I did not need to, because by the next Tuesday, the silence broke itself. It began with an anonymous screenshot leaked to a private business group, an internal legal document showing a recent change in Sterling Group's executive leadership. Clarissa's name was nowhere on it. Neither was Andrew's. Under the section marked primary shareholders with voting power, there were only 2 names, mine and Noah Grant. The post went viral within the industry. Event planners, corporate managers, former employees. Someone tagged the document with a single line, "Looks like the birthday party wasn't the promotion party she thought it was." It did not reach the news. It did not need to, because people with real power rarely need headlines. They work by their presence. By Thursday, a small financial blog ran a short piece under the title, "Sterling Group's Leadership Change. Who's actually in charge?" They used official papers, not rumors. They listed the new trust, the updated person with the right to sign, and a note about the creation of the Silent Seat Foundation, an organization now backed by more than $100 million in money. Clarissa's name was never mentioned, but her not being there was louder than any bad talk could be. Then came the internal newsletter, the one we send every 3 months to investors and senior management. It included a line that read, "Effective immediately, all financial decisions require 2 people to approve them, Margaret Sterling and Noah Grant." A quiet bomb hidden in a memo. One former employee reposted that memo with the words, "She was cut out of the family photo. Now she's the only one allowed to stop the family's money." I read that comment while drinking tea. I did not smile. I simply nodded. The internet did what it always does. It did not need the truth to be given. It found it. A wedding planner from Manhattan commented, "I remember seeing her at an opening in 2009. Everyone thought she was not important because she never gave speeches." Another posted, "You do not last for 3 decades in this industry by accident. She built the table they are now not allowed to sit at." The comments were not angry. They were respectful. No hashtags, no becoming viral, just the steady sound of a clear mind coming back to the surface. Clarissa, in all her desire to get what she wanted, had risked everything on a title she never had. She looked through the memo 3 times, hoping it was a mistake. Then her phone fell from her hand. For the first time, she realized she had never been part of the power, only standing next to it. Andrew, in all his belief that he should have what he wanted, had assumed my silence was the same as me giving up. They had not understood the difference between being quiet and being erased. That weekend, a former florist from our company shared a photo of the birthday party flowers. She wrote, "She chose every single flower, and they did not mention her once." The words under the picture said, "Funny how the woman who paid for the flowers never made it into the photo album." The post was shared 20,000 times. I was not tagged in any of them, but I read them quietly. I read every line like a list of what was owed to me. Each sentence was a debt finally acknowledged by the world. Clarissa did not speak in public again after that week. Her last post was a photo of her in front of the Grand Haven fountain with a filter. The words said, "Grace always wins." But the comments had already changed. Underneath, someone wrote, "Grace didn't sign the trust documents." Another wrote, "Power isn't a speech, it is a signature." And finally, she thought she married into a royal family. It turns out the crown was still in the drawer, and the queen never gave up her power. I saved that one, printed it, framed it, and placed it right next to the brass plaque in my office. The one that says founder. It remains there today. Not because I need to show I have won, but because sometimes the most powerful acts of showing the truth are not loud. They are precise. They are earned. And they do not come with applause. They come with correction. The message came at 6:47 in the morning. It was short, with no periods or commas, almost shaking. "Why did you do this? You made us look foolish." I stared at the screen. The name at the top said Andrew, but the words felt like they belonged to someone else, someone I had never met. I did not reply. Instead, I printed the message, slid it into a clear plastic cover, and sealed the edges with heat. I placed it into a small cedar box next to an old wedding ring I no longer wore, and the receipt from the first property I ever purchased on my own. They were symbols of loyalty, legacy, and love, all paid for completely. The knock came 3 hours later. My assistant stepped in and whispered, "They're here." I nodded once. I had chosen the smallest private dining room at Grand Haven. No fancy cloths, no catering service, just a view of water, 6 chairs, and a view of the harbor I had bought for almost nothing and turned into a large company. When they entered, no one spoke. Andrew stood still, his eyes red. Clarissa kept her head down, her mouth tight. And behind them came the couple who raised me, my adoptive parents. Older now, softer, quieter. They looked tired in a way that came from more than age. Clarissa sat first. Her voice was thin. "We came to apologize." I waited. Andrew sat next to her, leaning forward like a boy who was caught stealing. "I panicked, Mom," he said, his voice cracking. "I thought you were losing your mind. I thought I was helping you. You thought I was something to manage." I said quietly. He swallowed hard. Clarissa reached into her purse and pulled out a photo, one of us from years ago, from a trip to Santa Fe. I kept this, she whispered. I always admired you. I just forgot how to show it. My adoptive mother spoke next. We failed you, she said. We let Andrew believe your silence meant weakness. My father nodded. We told him you were lucky. We should have told him you were a fighter. Andrew's voice broke again. But why didn't you tell us, Mom? Why didn't you say you were the one behind all of it? I looked straight at him then. No tears, no anger, only truth. Because if you loved me, I said slowly, you would have remembered me, without proof. Silence settled like dust. Clarissa reached for my hand. I did not pull it away. My mother bowed her head. My father stared at the floor. Andrew tried again. I can't fix what I said, but I meant it when I said I was proud of you. You meant it, I said, when you thought I had no voice left to argue with you. He nodded. I rose from my seat and walked to the window. The harbor shined brightly in the light of the morning. Boats moved quietly. I thought of the decades I had spent building something that could not be taken away, only disrespected. I turned back to them. There is no getting even here, I said, only a change in direction. You guessed wrong about who I was, but I never forgot who you could be. Clarissa whispered, what happens now? I pointed toward the door. Now you walk out knowing the truth, and whether you carry shame or growth with you, that is your choice. Andrew stood. I want to earn your trust back. You had it, I said, and you spent it. He nodded again, slower this time. Clarissa followed him silently. My parents stayed behind for a few moments, then stood too. We see you now, my father said. I always saw you, I replied, even when you looked away. They left. I remained by the window. The breeze from the harbor touched the glass. The silence did not hurt. It healed. Later that day, I returned to my apartment. I opened the cedar box, the wedding ring, the deed, and now the message. I did not cry. I simply lit a candle and whispered, you remembered me too late, but I will not forget myself again. The next board meeting was full. All the heads of the departments, all the legal representatives, all the financial auditors were present. Clarissa sat quietly in the corner, holding her notepad, not sure if she was supposed to be there at all. Andrew arrived late, his eyes looking down. The weight of the past weeks was visible in the way his shoulders were low. I sat at the head of the table and did not speak right away. Instead, I took a thin, cream-colored envelope from my briefcase and handed it to the company's lead lawyer. I would like this to be entered into the company's records. I said, effective today. He opened it, looked through the contents, then raised his eyebrows slightly. I turned to Noah, who was seated 3 chairs to my left. Noah, I said, come here. He rose slowly, confused but calm, just like his father once was before the world taught him to run. I slid the official document across the table toward him. This is a direct transfer of 15% ownership in Sterling Group, I said calmly. Voting shares, executive privileges, effective immediately. A quietness fell over the room. Someone coughed. Another moved papers, pretending not to stare. Andrew didn't move. Clarissa looked like someone had just poured ice water on her. Noah's hands shook as he picked up the folder. I don't understand, Grandma, he said. You don't have to do this for me. Not because you stood up for me, I said, looking at him clearly and without wavering, but because you never needed me to prove anything. Noah blinked. His eyes shined, but he did not cry. He only nodded. Andrew let out a breath that was almost a sob. Clarissa looked down at her lap. The rest of the meeting went on without much happening. We moved on to talk about the budget, how to spend money, and end-of-year reports. But everyone knew a line had been drawn that day. not in revenge, but with a clear mind. 2 months later, Noah's wedding took place at Grand Haven, the resort where I had once changed my entire will. He chose a small guest list. No famous people, no big shows, just promises. Promises that meant something. The ceremony was held on the western patio under the ivy arch. I had planted it 20 years earlier when the land was still bare and rough. Noah's bride wore blue. Her mother gave a soft speech about grace. Noah thanked me without a microphone, only with a glance that said, "You matter to me." I did not sit in the front row. I chose a seat 3 rows back between a florist and a kitchen manager I had hired myself. I wore dark green and held a small piece of a plant in my hand. It was a memory. I watched, my hands folded, with no need to be seen, only to see. I had pressed that same piece of plant between the pages of my new will the night I changed it. It dried between the decisions, a reminder that memory, even in silence, keeps us connected to the truth. When the music played and they exchanged rings, I felt something quiet and full inside me. Not pride, not a feeling of winning, just peace. Clarissa was there. She sat still as a stone. No longer the bride who wanted to get ahead, just a woman who now understood what it was to not be there. Andrew did not speak. He watched his son with the look of a man who had finally learned to be quiet. After the ceremony, a few guests came to greet me. One young woman whispered, "Your grandson is so kind. It must come from somewhere." I smiled, then returned to my seat and looked out at the water. No camera was on me. No speech was waiting. The world had turned, and I had chosen stillness over being in the spotlight. I sat there for another hour after the guests left, my hand in my own hand. No one needed to hold it for me. I had learned finally that getting back what you lost does not come from being honored. It comes from refusing to erase yourself. And I had done that quietly, completely, and without asking for permission. After the wedding, Andrew stopped showing up. No official resignation, no email, no closing of the situation. One day his name was listed on the company list, and the next it simply was not. His work card showed red at the executive door. His email was sent to someone else. The receptionist stopped saying his name. The company did not fire him. They simply stopped pretending he belonged. The office he once used was emptied out overnight. His key card for the office was turned off. His voicemail box was given to someone else. No one asked questions. They understood. A man who turned his back on his legacy rarely walks forward again. He became, in all practical terms, the man who was once adopted. That was how the board began to refer to him, quietly, respectfully, but with finality. And just like that, the chapter closed. Noah, on the other hand, came in early and stayed late. He met with every head of department personally. He listened not to correct, but to learn. He began to change the company's inner culture. Less rules from the top, more humanity. He changed the company's plan to be more environmentally friendly. He connected executive bonuses to being honest with suppliers and started a policy for new parents who worked hourly, the kind I had never dared to dream of when I was mopping the floors of large event halls at midnight all those years ago. He asked me once if I thought he was doing too much too fast. I smiled and replied, "It is only too fast for those who are still standing still." Then one morning over tea, I told him I was ready to do something with the money I had kept private. $5 million in personal money. I had taken it out quietly the year Andrew turned 30. I never told him. I never needed to. But that money had been waiting for a purpose deeper than a goal. "I want to build something," I said, "for women like me." Noah nodded without asking for a business plan. "Then let us do it right," he said. 6 months later, we launched the Silent Seat Foundation. The name came to me in the middle of the night after a dream where I saw myself sitting alone at the side table during my own birthday, not invited to speak, not important enough to be honored, but there anyway. The seat that was never offered, the silence that was never accepted. That was the place we would start. The foundation provides money for school, places to live for a short time, and legal services to mothers who were thrown away after raising children who were not their own, or worse, whose own children wrote them out of their own histories. The first application we received was from a woman in Ohio who had sold her wedding ring to pay for her stepson's college. He never invited her to the graduation. I wrote her back personally. "You do not owe the world another explanation," I said. "Only your peace." The day of the foundation's launch, we did not hire famous people. We did not have a fancy party. We rented a quiet library hall near one of our hotels, filled it with fresh flowers and silver chairs, and invited the women who had sent us letters. Some came with walkers. Others came alone. But every single one came with a story. Noah stood behind the podium in a gray suit, his voice clear but low. He did not start with numbers or goals. He started with me. My grandmother never raised her voice. He said, pausing to let the words sink in, but the world finally heard her. A quietness filled the room, not from surprise, but from something deeper, recognition. He continued, "This foundation is not just about helping. It is about rewriting the story. For too long, we've let love be defined by who is seen, but real love happens in the background. It folds clothes. It pays bills. It keeps the light on without being seen." Women in the audience nodded quietly. He pointed toward me. This woman sat in the back row at my wedding, not because she was forgotten, but because she had nothing left to prove. I did not cry. I simply folded my hands in my lap and let the truth warm the room like sunlight on old stone. That night, after the guests had left, I walked with Noah through the empty hall. Chairs were stacked. The coffee table still had leftover lemon cookies. We passed by a banner with the foundation's logo, a quiet symbol of a single seat, beautifully drawn, empty. He turned to me and asked, "Does it feel like justice now?" I shook my head. "No," I said, "it feels like healing." He put his arm around me, and we stood there for a long time, not speaking, not needing to. Legacy is not what you leave behind. It is who steps forward because you did not give up. And that night, I finally knew mine was in the right hands. The letter came on a Thursday. It had no return address, just my name written carefully in the center. I sat by the window of my small home office. My tea was getting cold. I opened it with the same hands that had once held Andrew's bottle, wiped his tears, signed his tuition checks, and shredded the contract with his name on it. It was from Andrew. The note was only 5 lines long. "I walked past Grand Haven today. I saw the lights on in your office. I wonder if you ever think of me. I know now what I did. If you ever want to talk, I'll be in room 7 next Thursday, noon." No apology, no last name, just that quiet suggestion of a final talk. I let the letter sit on the desk for a full week. I did not show it to Noah. I did not mention it to my advisors. But come Thursday, I wore a dark blue dress, not black, and drove to Grand Haven alone. Room 7 was one of the smallest private lounges at the resort. I had chosen the wallpaper there myself years ago, a soft pattern that reminded me of my grandmother's living room. Andrew was already inside when I arrived. He stood up when I entered, but I did not offer a hug. I sat. So did he. There was no food, no flowers, no stage, just a mother and a man who once called her a useless person. He cleared his throat. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said. "I think I came to give it." I tilted my head. To give what? To give back the story. I took it. I let Clarissa write you out of it. I helped her. I wanted her to think I came from nothing, so I could be her everything. I said nothing. He kept going. She made me believe that your love was a business deal, that your presence was a stain. I needed her approval more than I needed your truth. I looked at him for a long time. You did not just erase me. You replaced me. He nodded. I know. And when everything fell apart, when she left after losing her board seat, I realized I had built my life on the foundation you gave me, but tried to hide the blueprint. The silence between us was sharp. He pulled out a small envelope. These are the photos Clarissa deleted. The ones with you from my graduation, from the fundraiser, from my wedding rehearsal. I found them in a folder on a hard drive called Unwanted. He slid them across the table. I did not touch them. I don't need them back. I said quietly, You do. He looked at me. Older than I remembered, thinner too. I came here hoping you'd say something that would let me start over. I smiled, a small but not unkind smile. You cannot start over with me, Andrew, but you can start over with yourself. Go build something honest this time. He stared down at his hands. You really loved me? I answered without pausing. I still do, but not in the way you might want. I love you the way a builder loves the first house they ever lost. Not because it lasted, but because it taught them how to build without false ideas. He stood, tears in his eyes, but not falling. Do you hate me? I shook my head. No, I survived you. He nodded once, then left. I sat in room 7 alone for a long time after he was gone. Then I walked out quietly, passing through the resort lobby I had designed, past the staff who no longer asked questions, past the guests who never knew my name, and into the sunlight of a world I had rebuilt with new hands. The photo folder he gave me, I mailed it to a charity art program that used old photos to teach children about fixing things. Let them turn my being erased into art, I thought. Let the next generation build beauty from betrayal. Let silence become art. If you were ever cut out of the family photo, if you were ever asked to stay quiet so you would not ruin the party, then this story is for you. Because trash does not write the family legacy. The ones who write it are the ones who paid for it and paid the price in silence. Not every mother speaks loudly. Some build companies behind closed doors. Some write their love in legal papers, not in demands. And when the world finally sees them, it is not because they shouted. It is because they stood and never moved.